Is he passing the buck?
Oh, perish the thought. No, of course he is. Of course he is. Look, the relationship between a Prime Minister and a Chancellor is always complicated and invariably tense, and out of that tension, hopefully, comes creative policy making. But the idea that the Chancellor, an ex-Chancellor, after the event then says, well, of course, she shouldn't have done that. I told her not to. If he told her not to, he should have said, I'm not going to do this, Liz. What was the rush? And I think this is quite sad, actually. It's ferrets squabbling in a sack about, which one of them ate their way through, created the hole in the middle of the sack. And I think that, look, Kwarteng's got to say something, because, to be honest, he's on the verge, certainly in politics, of being unemployable. I mean, he's obviously a talented guy. He can go back into hedge funds and all those places, probably make a lot of money. But he will always feel that he had a big chance which he blew away. But having, in the days when the Chief Secretary was the only second minister that was ever in the cabinet, because the Treasury was so important, I obviously saw the tensions between Margaret Thatcher and her Chancellor, Nigel Lawson, and all of that close up. And then when I became Chief Secretary, it was always perfectly obvious that relationship is going to be tense, it's going to be difficult. But he cannot get away with saying that I told her to do this, because if he told her to do that, he should have said, Prime Minister, I'm not going to do this. I am insisting. What would she have done? Sacked him? But, instead of which, oh, yes, I'll, 3 bags full, ma'am, off he went on and did it.
But the argument he seems to be making, and it's timing, he seems to be saying she went too far and too fast after the budget, rather than before, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
See, there was a fundamental objection to what they did, and that is that if you want to reward rich people by giving them a tax break, you don't do it out of borrowed money. The whole idea...
You don't make it your priority. It was almost the first thing they did.
It was ridiculous. I mean, the whole idea of tax cuts is you say to the public, we're going to make savings on public expenditure. We've got to reduce the amount of the wealth of the nation that is consumed by the state. And then as a reward for you guys gritting your teeth and going through this, we'll reduce your taxes. That's not the way they did it.
But they both, certainly Liz Truss in her farewell speech outside the front door of Number 10, and Kwasi Kwarteng in this, they both believe that they were right. They still are insisting that they were right.
How many collapses of the currency does there have to be for them to see they were wrong? I mean, when you think of Margaret Thatcher, what she wanted to do was cut public expenditure. And, I was a lucky beneficiary of her policies, because when I was Chief Secretary, we produced, and happily, it had nothing very much to do with me, I just happened to be the guy who announced the figures, the smallest percentage of the national wealth consumed by the state since records began. That only happened because of bearing down on public expenditure on a sustained effort over a lot of years. These people seem to think there were shortcuts, or rather, they seem to think that in order to offer tax cuts, you didn't have to cut public expenditure. You merely added to the deficit by borrowing more money. I mean, I hate to sound patronising, make it sound such an awful old git, but this was childish,
I tell you